Corwin,
What's
thanks
up?
for coming, man.
I'm here.
You're here.
Welcome.
That's right.
In the flesh. We're happy to have you. When we first thought about having this podcast, one of the first people on our guest list
Was not you. You didn't even make the list.
Why am I here?
Because you live close, it's good on the budget. That's, No, but I don't know a lot of people who exhibit discipline, especially in their health space. And so we wanted to kind of pick your brain on that. And as far as discipline goes, I'm lacking in some of those areas, I'm sure. But there's a lot of good things that you have to say and a lot of good things that you have to offer. I've listened to your podcast on your episode on It's a Good Day podcast at least 8 times, I think.
Let's go.
And so, I'm just excited to have you here and kind of interested to pick your brain. Co-host Nick is here as well.
Yep.
What's up, Nick?
What's up?
He's still here. He actually never left
not
from the last episode.
not only were you the top of the list, but you were the first person that we thought of that maybe we could have on as a repeat guest. You've got a lot to offer, and I'm sure this won't be the only time we talk to you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Love it.
so you were going to sign you on a contract, and then you're going to be stuck here. The pay is terrible. So.
5 years, $0.
Yeah, oh boy.
All commission based on no sales.
That's going to be a problem.
So if you want to, just give us a brief synopsis of who you are in case anybody doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, I would imagine probably everybody for the first little while will know exactly who I am because it'll be all 3 of our cousins listening to this podcast
That's the idea.
For now.
Yep.
But I'm Corwin Christman. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I'm actually really thankful to be here today. It's fun to just get together, hang out, and get a workout in. We got a workout in right before this episode started.
I'm still sweating.
Yep. We're all still a little sweaty. No cold plunge, but maybe we'll do that on
That's a bummer.
Different podcast.
Later.
But anyway, a little bit about me. I actually am a handyman. I do just general construction stuff, not on a large scale, obviously. You guys already know that, but the listeners, all 3 of our cousins don't, so I'll tell you guys. I have 4 amazing children, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, right? Because we're going to be talking about families a little bit. Married to the most beautiful woman in the world, Hannah. We've been married for 13 years. This next month, what are we in right now? April, May, June? No, June. So we will have been married 13 years in June. So I have a little bit of knowledge in staying together with my spouse, which is a good thing. That's and not only are we together, but we are, I would
together.
say, a lot of that too. But
Not that.
I would say
PG, we're PG.
I would say I haven't met another couple who are as happy as we are.
Wow, Nick. Okay. Wow.
I mean, I know that's
That'll conclude the podcast for today.
That's a tough bar to that's a tough bar to meet. But in all honesty, like I'm friends with a lot of people, and I have a lot of amazing couples in my life. But I sit down and I evaluate. We do that at time to time. You know what I mean? Just as individuals and as couples, like we evaluate where we really at. Where am I at personally? Where am I at in my marriage, my fatherhood, all those things. And like we do that occasionally and just evaluating where we're at and the amount of times where we really get into something and end up saying something or doing something that really hurts the other person. And like that's kind of how I evaluate our relationship. Like if I have to do or say something to win an argument or win a battle that's going to hurt her, like that's just not good. And so when I evaluate our relationship, like we just don't do that. Like we fight fair, we communicate well, and so I don't know. I think we have the best marriage.
Yeah,
in the
you
world.
guys are super solid.
So,
to
stay on that point real quick before you move on, what do you think is the key? Well, we know the divorce rates in the country. We know, divorce rates even in the church and different things. So I'm kind of curious what the antidote is.
Oh, man. Number one, the key is having Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and having the Holy Spirit transforming your insides every day. Like if you don't have Jesus, I don't know how you can do it. Like, because in order to have the second key, which is to be selfless, you have to have Jesus. You just do. It doesn't work otherwise. Selfishness is, I think, one of the biggest killers of marriage because being selfish, it just stops any sort of flow for the other person because you're just looking for whatever is going to satisfy you, whatever is going to make you happy, whatever is going to fulfill you. And it just, I don't know, for me, being selfless was something early on in our marriage I caught on to really quickly. And I realized that actually the best way for me to have a good marriage and to be served by my spouse is to serve her first. Always putting her first, always like saying what is going to benefit her the most. Because in return, it's kind of like sowing and reaping. Like me sowing all that selflessness just reaped the selflessness back. You know what I mean? Because then in turn, she was selfless. And yeah, I think that's the main thing. Commitment is another big thing. Like if you're ever in the mindset where you're looking in another direction other than to your spouse to fulfill the marriage part of you, you're going down a slippery slope really fast. So for me, commitment is also big. There's so many different things, dude. Pride. Guys,
humility.
Guys deal with pride so much, and being humble and being willing to just be like, you know what? I'm sorry. Like I messed up. I'm not perfect. It's knowing that we are not perfect just as human beings, and understanding that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that rub people the wrong way. And even if it's not intentional and your spouse brings something to you, just say, you know what? I'm sorry. Like, even if it wasn't intentional, I'm still sorry. Like, I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't my intention. And if you do something that was wrong or malicious, just go back and apologize. You know what I mean? It's very, very difficult, especially for guys, to look at themselves and still feel valued as a guy if they have to say, I was wrong.
It's a masculine nature where it's like you have to be in charge.
Yeah, true masculinity lies in humility, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And that's, I don't know.
It's harder to be humble than to be macho masculine. It's more masculine to be humble than it is to project this false masculinity. Right. I think is the key. Yeah.
But the rest of the world they don't understand that. They don't believe that. They don't see that. And that's probably why divorce rates are crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I had listened to Hannah's episode on a Good Day podcast, or maybe I just heard her talking. And this is something I adopted in my marriage as well. She had said that you had come to her one time, I think, and basically just told her, hey, I don't really know why, but I'm feeling a little irritable today. So if that's what you see, then, just kind of bear with me and whatever. That communication we've used in my marriage a bunch. It's like a cheat code. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a little irritable today, because people do get irritable, and sometimes it's just not because of anything specific.
Right.
And if your spouse doesn't know that, then they think it's them.
Oh,
what did I do? Or, man, he's just in a bad mood, and so now I'm going to be bitter or whatever. Yeah. So just that open line of communication is so huge, and that's a nugget that people can take. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Married, 4 kids.
Yep.
Handyman. What else?
Yep. We're pretty heavily involved in ministry. We attend a local church. We're heavily involved there. We also are involved in a couple other ministries where we do worship and where we speak or preach. That with kind of Restoration House up in Constableville. That's our family, and Uncle Matt and Tish there. Was pretty interesting. Last night we just had a debrief from the last Encounter School. Encounter School is you guys kind of know what that is, but it's like a month-long biblical course on encountering the Holy Spirit and letting Him transform you. Anyway, we had that debrief, and it's just like you do not find the cohesiveness and the what is it? It's like a togetherness in ministry where everybody's literally just working together and nobody's out to be the top dog. Yeah. There's so much humility, and I just love that about that ministry. Anyway, it's probably one of the only places where I have seen that kind of ministering style, where Matt and Tish they're the heads. They lead the entire thing. They own the school, but like there's so much humility there. And I just love that. So what else do I do? Dude, I am big into fitness.
Yes, you are.
So into fitness and nutrition. I have kind of a side hustle that I started like 2.5, 3 years ago. And it's called CNH Fitness. I don't have a lot of clients right now, but I started this fitness company because I love helping people reach their fitness goals. And for a lot of people, consistency is where they lack. And they don't have either the self-drive or they don't have the ability to set a schedule and just make things happen. So they need somebody to help them. And originally I started this thing just for my friends and some family members and anybody else that kind of was like, hey, I need some help with this fitness thing. I would just help people for free. And I found myself writing people plans and they would never use it. Like I would check in with them and I wasn't their personal coach, but I would tell people, hey, I'll write you a plan. And I would spend hours and hours and hours, sometimes days, writing these plans, and I would send it out to somebody. And they would just, like 3 weeks later, hey, how's that plan going?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't done anything with it. I'm just like, dude,
right.
I just gave you like a $1,500 value, and you did nothing with it.
Right.
Would you say that consistency is the biggest factor in change, like above nutrition, above what type of working out you're doing? Consistency is the most important factor in becoming fit?
I would say it's the second most important factor.
What's number one?
Discipline. Discipline, because consistency is the most important if you're disciplined enough to do it. Like, if you're not disciplined to be consistent.
Sounds easier said than done.
Yeah, it's not easy. I've been doing fitness for, how old am I now? I'm 33. I've been doing fitness since I've been about 15. And I started running. That was kind of my introduction to fitness. Started running, and a guy named Wilbur Zare. Maybe you guys should have him on the podcast sometime.
On the list.
Okay. Anyway, Wilbur Zare, amazing, amazing man of God. And he kind of, like in the beginning of my fitness journey, kind of took me under his wing a little bit, went out running with me and just kind of showed me how to do some running workouts. I didn't know anything about fitness at the time. And he just was super nice, super humble, and just kind of showed me what he knew. And then from there, I started doing some races, and then I got into P90X. But wow, we're getting way off topic.
Man, dude, those are the days.
Keep going.
I hate it.
Take us back.
But I hate it,
but I love it.
5 a.m., Laville Gym. Take us back.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, like, we, when Hannah and I first got married, we did P90X together. And that's really what, like, solidified my understanding of I need to work out, like, every day. It needs to happen. I was a pretty average, like, looking guy. Not super overweight or anything like that, but definitely not shredded or didn't look all that muscular. It's funny, I look back at some pictures of when I first started, like, the working out, consistent weight training working out. And I look at myself, I'm like, wow, man, he does not look very good. But anyway, so we kind of started really getting consistent with that. And then a few years later, we kind of get into some of the Chris Gethin stuff, which is more bodybuilding style and kind of going into
him.
Yeah,
we'll tag
Chris Gethin. Let's
We'll
get
him on.
Get him on the podcast.
Dude's a beast.
Chris.
Beast.
Anyway, he is a beast. Crazy. He's wrote tons of workouts. Definitely followed a lot of his journey and found some inspiration from that. But after kind of going through some of his stuff, I got a little crazy with working out. I did some fitness competitions and some stuff like that, and everything kind of came around full circle for me to where now I'm in it for the health. I like to look good too, but I think it's most important to be functional and to be able to live well, feel healthy, feel good. So that's kind of where I'm at. We do a hybrid training. Most of the time right now we're training for a Spartan race, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. And how far is that? Because it's not just like a sprint.
Well, this one's not a sprint. Nope. The sprint I think is a 5K. We're doing a 10K.
Okay. Up a mountain.
Yeah. It's a lot of feet of elevation.
Nick is so excited about that.
Super pumped. Yeah, it's going to be great.
I'm stoked.
I might have to join just for the podcast's sake, just so we can have you back on and talk
Let's
about
go.
Awesome. Let's do it.
how
In 3
fun
months?
it was.
I can't imagine. Yeah, I'm sure there are spots left. People sign up. Right.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Anyway, so we kind of do it other than right now. We do a hybrid style training where we incorporate weight training 3 days a week. And then we do kind of CrossFit style lifts where it's just like HIIT cardio, but also functional movements in there. Like sometimes we'll run on the treadmill at an incline. Sometimes we'll do like kettlebell swings. Sometimes we'll do push presses or hang cleans. A lot of times what our workouts look like is like 45 minutes to an hour of like an EMOM every minute on the minute. And then you just pick a certain amount of weight,
right,
a certain amount of reps, and you complete it in that minute. And then you get to rest or not rest if you're slow.
Well, it's funny because we joke about it, and when you come over, it's not like we're just doing, all right, we're going to do chest press, and then we're going to do, a bench, and we're going to do a row. It's like, you always come over and do the hardest workouts.
It's gonna suck.
And put me through it.
Yeah.
And I'm actually embracing more of the hybrid style, so I am starting to learn to like the high-intensity work, and I've never been that way. I've never been a long-distance kind of athlete or anything like that, a little bit more explosive, so it's fun to push myself with somebody who can just get up and run a marathon like you do.
Yeah, that was
fun. I think that what you were touching on before was discipline over motivation a little bit, because discipline is supposed to kick in when you don't feel motivated.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's no way to feel motivated every day of the week. Every week of the year, every month of the year. Right. Like it doesn't happen. And yeah, it's just really hard, because in the moments when you don't want to do something, if you have committed to it and you're disciplined enough to just make that choice and you get started, like a lot of people say the hardest thing to do is step your foot in the gym or start that first set. And then once you're there and you're doing it, you're able to complete it and continue because you have already won the battle, so to speak, which for most people, that's the battle, is just getting there. I've heard people talk about, like, they've literally driven to the gym and not gotten out of their car. It's like, if you can get out of the car and you can get in the door, you will complete your workout. For me, I think the Lord has blessed me, honestly, I really do, with probably a higher level of discipline than most. And so I don't take for granted the fact that, like, I'm able to be pretty disciplined. It's just kind of in my personality. It's kind of in my, I don't know, maybe my DNA, the way that God created me, or my upbringing, or the things that I've experienced. But I understand how hard it is to be disciplined, because there have been times where I have had to make the choice when everything inside of me doesn't want to work out, or everything inside of me wants to eat that other cookie. And you just have to look at it. What do I want now versus what do I want most? So do I want to eat this cookie right now because it's going to taste amazing, or do I want 6-pack abs in 3 months? So if the thing that you want most is more important to you than the thing that you want now, you'll be able to have that discipline. So you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Right now, we're not waking up super early, which is really nice. So I used to have a schedule where I had to be crazy regimented, and I just didn't have any way around it, because my work schedule was you have to be at work for these 12 hours, these days of the week. There's no changing that. Now, because I'm a handyman and I get to make my own schedule, there's days where I'll get up at like 6 in the morning and it's like, I'd rather have 2 hours of God time today and work out at like 9, as opposed to being like, well, I have to be to work at 6 a.m., so I have to be up at 4 and get my workout in. Right. So the flexibility part is super, super nice for us in our scheduling right now. But there still is an element of having to make that choice and saying, okay, I want to be consistent, and I have to make the choice now, because I know that in 3 months I'm not going to hit my goals if I choose what I want right now.
Yeah, one thing that most people don't realize is that once you make a commitment, then your only job is, besides fulfilling the commitment and having the discipline to see it through, but your next biggest thing is to not overcomplicate it. Like, once you step foot in the gym, or you step foot on the pavement because you're going for a run or whatever it is you're doing, don't go for a run. Go for a 20-minute walk. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, start small.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, like, don't hurt yourself. You have to start small. If you're somebody who's never worked out before and you go to the gym and you throw the 35s on either side of the bar and try to bench, or the 45s and try to bench 135, you'll be hurt in a month. You know, your elbows are going to hurt, your knees are going to hurt. Like, people don't realize you got to start small, and that makes the commitment a little easier. And it's supposed to be a flow. It's supposed to be, wow, this commitment isn't too hard to make because the weights are light right now. The walks are a little easy right now. And as you work up to what you're more and more able to do as time goes on, that creates a habit formation at the same time. And then you find yourself actually enjoying it. Oh, yeah. And then you find yourself not wanting to miss a day. And it's supposed to be that way. A lot of people, they try to make that commitment, and they start too big, and they burn out in a week. It's not supposed to work that way. Yeah. It's supposed to be this nice flow into like, oh, I enjoy making this commitment. And yeah, make the commitment and start small. It's huge.
That's why having a fitness coach is really, this is not a plug for me at all, but having a fitness coach, somebody that actually knows what they're doing, the word is called a fitness threshold. So everybody has a different fitness threshold. Like if we go out, this isn't boasting, but if we go out and we're like, hey, I want to run 6 miles today, my fitness threshold is I can run that at a 6:45 pace or a 7-minute pace. If you've never done that before, then you're going to be running that at like a 10 or a 12-minute pace. And understanding that everybody has a different place that they're starting is so important. A lot of people will get online and they'll watch somebody that is literally shredded out of their mind and has been working out for 10 years, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this guy's program. Well, that's not going to work for you because you're going to get hurt. And exactly what you just said, you're going to get, not only will you get hurt, but you'll be demotivated. And then your discipline will lack, and then you'll start this program, you'll get 3 days into it, you'll be so sore you can't do it that 3 weeks later you go to start again, and you have this thing in the back of your mind that says, well, I'm not going to be able to do it anyway, so why would I even start? Yeah. So it's like...
Do you find that the psychological aspect of fitness in general, especially for your clients, is something that is the hardest hurdle for a coach to get over? Because it seems to me that delaying gratification is a very difficult thing. It's hard. But also is finding a sustainable regimen that you can stick with and understanding that it's not going to be an overnight thing. For me, I know from experience, I've done many programs where I start it for a couple of weeks and I don't see the results that I want.
Yeah.
And then you start making excuses, and then you start not, I'll take a day off, or I was busy today at work, so I don't really have time, or you've got to balance, your work life and your kids and your family and working out. And I'm finding that you can get up earlier. You can do it in the morning. You can find time to do it. But is that, as a coach, the biggest hurdle for the people that you mentioned before who aren't following through?
The mental side of it. Yeah, I think that would be safe to say, because ultimately it is a choice. Yes, your body has to move and get in the car and drive to the gym, or go down to your basement, or put your shoes on, whatever. But the mental side of it is like you have to be strong enough to even have the desire. And it just goes back to, what do you want now versus what do you want most? And that's where people kind of get hung up or get caught up. It's like you need to have a goal, and it has to be realistic. Like you can't look at a picture of one of your friends, because you might get down to the same body fat percentage and still not look like them, because everybody's body is made differently. Everybody has different genetics. Everybody's muscle, like your muscles actually displaced on your body differently than other people. So you might look at a picture of Chris Gethin and be like, dude, this guy is amazing looking. Like, I want to look like him. Okay, well, he's 10% body fat, 190 pounds, whatever. Mm-hmm. If I get to 190 pounds and I'm 10% body fat, I'm not going to look anything like him, because I don't have his genetics. I'm not his brother. And even in families, you can look different. So it's just understanding that having a realistic goal is super important. And that's what I tell a lot of my people, like just friends, everybody is like, dude, put a realistic goal in front of yourself and then start super slow to hit that goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. When I got down to 11% body fat, I looked nothing like you.
Well, we're getting close to having to just restart those, but yeah, we'll take a quick break and come right back.
Okay? Love it.
All right, and we're back. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the transition between what can motivate you, what discipline drives you and how important that is. But I also kind of wanted to ask you specifically about that beautiful watch. So go into a little bit of detail about what you got there.
So man. I just recently switched from Fitbit to Garmin. Well, it's actually funny because in the police academy, I had a Garmin. It got shot with one of those little simulation rounds. Oh. Stupid me. I took it in and it got
rookie
shot.
Mistake.
Yep, rookie
That's an
mistake.
academy mistake.
Anyway, the picture, I have the picture saved on my Instagram so I can forever remember that beautiful watch. Anyway, so I switched over to...
R.I.P.
Yeah, I know. I switched over to Fitbit for about 6 years, and I just recently switched back to Garmin because my buddy Zeke Segrist switched to Garmin from Fitbit. He had a couple issues with Fitbit back and forth, and he convinced me to go back to a Garmin. And the reason I really, really am glad that I did is because Garmin is just on another level, fitness tracking wise. Like Fitbit's good for the average fitness enthusiast, but I've been training for a long time, and like it's important that your numbers and your metrics are kind of consistent. Especially if you're training for things like the Spartan Beast or when I was doing fitness shows and that kind of thing, like you really want to know all of the metrics, the sleep, the heart rate, how many calories you're burning, the distances, like GPS wise and all that stuff. So, switched away from Fitbit, got this watch, and it tracks so much better. Like everything is so much better. We kind of compared steps from the Fitbit to this watch. And when I first had the Fitbit, like I would average between like 15,000 and like 23,000 steps a day.
That's wild. That's so many steps.
That's a lot of steps. But think about it this way. Now that I have the Garmin, it doesn't track the same. Like it actually tracks my steps. So now like I average closer to like 10,000, like 14,000 is a high day for me now. Like I actually have to go for a walk or get on the treadmill or go for a run to get steps. Like it just doesn't transfer over. So
that's because it would read your arm moving, just like if you were waving your arm while you're talking, that would say that those were steps.
Exactly. Like like movements like this. Oh, that's a step.
Oh, wow.
That's a step.
Man. How many calories are you burning right now?
Yeah, exactly. It would still track your heart rate, the same way, but they're definitely on another level, fitness wise and tracking wise. So I love it. It was a little bit more expensive than my last Fitbit, but that's okay. It's totally worth it.
I think the things that I like about, I have an Apple Watch, and the funny thing about this is it's a newer one that will actually detect if you're swimming, and it will tell you what stroke you're swimming.
That's cool.
Which creeps me out a little bit. But besides the point, it has a really good job with sleep. And I think that if I could get more discipline in using that app more often and managing when I sleep, it's so easy for me to, when it's bedtime, just be scrolling my phone and then realizing that it was an hour past where I wanted to go to sleep. And
right.
So maybe there's a fail-safe. I can just shut my phone off. There's got to be an app for that, to shut your phone off.
There probably is. Or you just need some more discipline.
Oh, you got me.
Oh, boy.
So the next part that I kind of want to go into is I'm an analytical guy. Nick's an analytical guy. You're very disciplined, which means you're a very analytical guy.
Have to be, yep.
When can that become too much, and when can it really interfere with the rest of your life to create an unhealthy balance? Because for me personally, I can see how that would be a problem for many people, to get people with addictive personalities, people with obsessive personalities. So I know you've had a little bit of a journey in that area, so I want to hear about it.
Yeah, that's the downside of somebody that is an all or nothing person. And that's a lot of wonderful and amazing characteristics that I have are like the all or nothing complements and helps. It's like, well, if I'm married, I'm committed to that until death. Like it's never going to change. I'm never cheating on my spouse. I'm never looking in another direction. I don't even look at another woman with any thoughts of man, I'd really like to be with her, or wonder what she's like, or just never happens because I'm so one-minded, or I'm so all or nothing. And just like anything for fitness, if you become all or nothing, and fitness becomes the all, that can very quickly start taking over your life, literally taking over your life, because time is your life. And there, you can just add so many things, like little increments of fitness into your life so that it takes up and consumes every second of extra time that you have. Like, seriously, work, even when I'm working, I'm thinking about like steps. Okay, how many steps am I getting? Or if I haven't gotten enough steps and I'm at a friend's house, I'm like, oh geez, okay, I need to get up and walk around a little bit here. Like, I haven't got enough steps in for today. Like, that's kind of compulsive. Or another thing is, like, if you always take your food with you to every restaurant and you never eat at a restaurant, or you're never willing to be like, okay, this is probably about a 300 calorie meal, and you get to the place where you're so obsessive, all or nothing, where you're like, well, I'll just bring my own food because I don't know what kind of oils they used. Like, that can become a little excessive,
That's a
crazy.
fun guy to go to dinner with.
I can confirm that I have been places with Corwin where he's looked at his watch, seen he was short on steps, and began walking around the kitchen island. It happens.
Yeah, it was definitely a season and period in my life, which I think we should talk about that a little bit, just so people kind of understand my fitness journey. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I went through a program of Chris Gethin's. And I always wanted to be shredded, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to get to myself to a body fat percentage where you can be shredded. And being shredded is not healthy. Like, there are people who are very healthy and have abs. And typically for guys, that's between the 10 and 12% body fat. But anything below 10%, it can start to become unhealthy. Very, very few body types live below 10%. Some do, but it's pretty rare. For me, my body style, I live between 10 and 12% body fat, and I have abs at that stage. So rewind back to this program. This was back in 2020. Chris Gethin put a program out, and in the program was a nutrition guide. And I understood through this nutrition guide how to calculate my food. And that was largely based on using a food scale and literally weighing out every single gram of food that goes in your mouth, and then taking that measurement or that number and plugging it into your phone, whether that's MyFitnessPal or the Fitbit app, or there's probably hundreds of other ones. But so we would go through his program, and when you're calculating your food and you're putting everything in your fitness, MyFitnessPal, you can guarantee you know exactly how many calories you're eating. And in order to lose weight or be at a place where you get shredded, you have to be losing weight over a certain period of time or whatever. And my body fat started to go down as I started losing fat as I was in a deficit. And I got to the place where I got shredded. Like, I won that fitness competition, and it was amazing. Like, the feeling of being able to control my food and see my body respond the way that I had always wanted to, but didn't know how to get, was amazing. Like, it's crazy, like drugs type of crazy. I've never done like drugs, like pot or any of those things. So I don't know what it actually feels like, but I can imagine that control is like the dopamine hit that you get when you do like heroin or fentanyl or whatever. However, once I got to that place, I got to a very unhealthy level of control, and I wasn't willing to then go back to normal life. And fitness was all consuming. Like, I kid you not, at that time I was a police officer. I was driving around in my car, and I would literally be thinking about food every second of my shift. Like, I would watch fitness videos where people would eat food, like super high calorie, disgusting food. I loved watching baking shows and like videos all about food, because like, if you're in a deficit for a long time, your brain just gravitates towards food. Anyway, so for probably 2 years, I was in this place of tracking my steps and walking around if I didn't get my correct amount of steps, whether I was with my friends or not. I would take my food almost always with me to restaurants or people's houses because I didn't want to let the control go of knowing exactly what was in my food because I was afraid of losing the progress that I had, whatever. So it just became all consuming mentally, physically. Probably I wasn't in the greatest, not necessarily the greatest emotional state, but it wasn't healthy. Like I wanted to control that so much that it became unhealthy because that's all that I was doing, all I was thinking about. And there was a few times where Hannah told me, hey, you're addicted to this thing. And I was kind of like, you're my spouse. Like, I don't have to listen to you. Get out of here. No, she very lovingly would bring stuff up, but was not like hitting me over the head with anything. And she kind of allowed me to stay in that place for a while. But she would still kind of bring it back around of, hey, this is still unhealthy. Like, you should probably figure this out. And she said that, you're addicted to fitness kind of thing. And I was like, I could stop at any time. But could I?
Says every person addicted to anything.
Yeah,
I can just stop this anytime. And
what were you sacrificing? What was the problem?
The main sacrifice was the time. For me, working out took precedence. Weighing my food out took precedence. It was just emotionally like, it's just heavy when you're always thinking about, okay, well, I have to do this thing or else I'm going to lose the thing that I've worked for, which in reality is not true at all. Like I have now come out of that and I've been like very functional fitness with very healthy lifestyle of my eating. And like, I like the way that I look. I like the way that I feel. I sleep really well. Like, just overall, and I perform really well. Like, I mean, obviously you guys know we've worked out together a few times. Like I can withhold and withstand some pretty grueling workouts, but I'm not at the place where it's like, I have to control every single thing that goes in my mouth. So, that switch happened for me where I was like in control all the time of everything fitness wise, food wise. I was at Christmas and my sister Delight, she kind of confronted me and said, hey, you're addicted. Like you have a problem kind of thing. And at that point I broke down. I was just crying, weeping before her and my parents and my wife. And it was really, really good because the Lord kind of broke something inside of me. And I was basically at the place where I was like, okay, Lord, like I need to give this up. I can't continue going down this road. Not that it's going to eventually kill me, but it would have led to a long-term issue if I hadn't let it go, kind of. So after that kind of happened, we started, like right away, I stopped counting calories. I was still very mindful of my food intake and just different things because you can still choose, I'm going to have a hamburger or I'm going to have a salad. You can still make those choices. And I would still make the healthier choices, but I would eat food at people's houses. Like I would go out to restaurants and I would order just a regular meal and I wouldn't be like, well, geez, I need to bring my own food. So it went back to being a very healthy lifestyle of being able to kind of live and still do fun things and hang out with people and not make them feel bad because I wasn't eating their food or getting up in the middle of hanging out and be like, okay, I need to walk around your kitchen.
Was that transition easy? Was it freeing, or did you have a hard time feeling like, I don't know how many calories this is, or did you feel like mentally free?
In the beginning, like the first couple days, it was really challenging, but because I trusted my wife and my friends to have my best interest in mind, I said, okay, obviously I have an issue here, and because they're telling me that what I'm doing is not healthy, I believe the truth that they were looking out for my best interest, which, man, that could take us into another topic. You better have people in your life that you can actually hear. Like, people are in your life who will speak things, but are you actually hearing them? Like, you should have people in your life that can do that. Anyways, so Delight did that for me, and yes, the transition for the first couple of days was tough, but then it became a lot easier, and I understood how much better that was for me overall.
Nice. That would be hard for me to, as somebody who is an all or nothing person as well, who prefers to do things in a regimented fashion, who feels like when you're doing things in that regimented fashion is the most optimal way of doing that thing. It would be very hard for me to put the scale in the drawer and not touch it and feel like you don't have control. It would have taken me more than a few days to get used to that. So you probably caught it before it was really a problem, like really a problem.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, the other thing is, like, don't discount the Holy Spirit in all this, because he had already been speaking to me. Like, what Delight had said and what my wife had said, that just confirmed what the Holy Spirit was already pricking my heart in. You are not in a good place here. You need to make a different decision. You need to let some of the control go. Like, so that had already been happening. And the Lord had been convicting me, saying, you're spending too much time on this. Like, I want to spend more time with you. And so in certain moments, I was going against the Holy Spirit. And that's why the moment when I finally let go, like, the transition happened very quickly because it was a choice in my heart. And I said, okay, Lord, I'm done. It's no different than somebody that's addicted to a drug who then lays it all down, goes to the altar and says, okay, Lord, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's the same exact thing. And in that moment, I made that choice and just said, okay, I'm no longer going to do this. That's where the all or nothing personality really helps. Because as long as you're listening to the Holy Spirit and the people around you who have your best interest in mind, because they can see what you can't see, right? I mean, obviously, if we could see what other people saw, our lives would be very different. We would make different choices. So in that moment, when people showed me that and the Holy Spirit confirmed it, I was just like, okay, I'm done with this. And then that slowly kind of pushed me away from this very regimented, very regimented eating schedule and working out schedule. Like, if I was doing a program, I would never deviate.
Yeah.
Never deviate from that program. Not only the specific days, but the specific exercises, how much weight I was doing, what the exercises were, like reps, sets. So this just like really helped me get away from that and start to enjoy the process of just fitness in general. Mm-hmm. And that's where, like, me writing my own workouts, like, I write what I want to do. I know, because of the research, I know what I need to do, and I understand hypertrophy, and there's so much that goes into writing a fitness plan and a nutrition plan. Like, I understand those things, and I still work them into when I write plans for myself. But now I write plans that it's like, oh, I don't want to do those exercises today. Today's back day, but I'll write a plan that, puts more pull-ups in or more rows, or maybe I don't want to do dumbbell rows today. I want to do Pendlay rows, and I'll just do the barbell or whatever. And I'm not so strict on what program I'm following that I can't deviate from that. And that's where it becomes a much healthier hobby overall.
When it comes to time, I think that's something for me that I struggle with, because if I'm going to work out, I want to get a good workout. Yeah. Like, I don't want to come down and go through the motions and feel like I didn't exert myself properly or whatever. Also, you can over-optimize yourself a little bit, whereas if I don't get my cold plunge in and then my lift and then sauna, sometimes I don't feel like I did everything I needed to do for that day. But if you can get to a place where if you can do those things, that's great. And it's positive.
Right.
And you kind of control the optimization, because that's kind of the push nowadays, is make sure everything you're doing is done to the exact top degree that it can be done. Otherwise, it's not as good.
Not doing it for you.
Right.
Not beneficial.
Yeah, equals nothing. No work was done. And that's just not true.
Equals no work is done.
That's just not true.
Yes. And that's
flexibility.
Yep.
Like, you hear that talked about a little bit, like flexible eating or flexible lifestyle or flexible workouts. Like, that's what's important. You do have to have flexibility in it, or else it becomes too regimented. Mm-hmm. And your mindset's like, well, if I don't do all of these things, then I didn't do anything. Well, no, it's better for you to go for a 10-minute walk than to sit on the couch all day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's better for you to get a little bit in, and that's where we were talking about, where do you start? Start with something small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember the first time I dabbled in powerlifting, It was the Strong List program that you recommended to me.
Yeah.
And I read his 100-page document. Literally, it's like between 90 and 100 pages of the theory of the Strong List 5x5 program. I read the whole thing. It took me like 4 hours. It was ridiculous. I found it interesting, so it wasn't torture, but looking back, like, I was at that place where I cared too much about this needs to be done to a T perfectly or else it's not going to work at all.
Right.
And that's not true. The program, in short, says don't do any work outside your workout or else your next workout you'll fail. It relies on literally peak optimal lifting where you do your workout on this day and then you do nothing until your next workout.
Right.
Roundabout that kind of idea. And I remember there was a portion of the workout where you could choose to do chin-ups or skull crushers to work in some bicep, tricep action.
Yeah.
And I remember stressing over whether I should be adding chin-ups and skull crushers to the workout because I was so worried that if I overworked my body on this day's workout, I would not be able to complete the next workout. And I really didn't want that to happen. And how dumb that is looking back. Like,
dude, I remember you calling me. I remember talking
Did
with
I
you.
really?
Yes.
Oh, man.
I remember talking with you about that and being like, dude, that's not how it works.
It was.
I remember talking with you about that.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, that's a great example of even if I were to, even if you get to the gym the next day and you fail the workout, that's work done.
Right.
And you are literally you have built muscle, you've done work, and it's this whole idea of not doing it optimally means that you didn't do anything is just not true. I mean, get there and do something, and it's a
success,
a net benefit. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
And there's going to be different training. I think I said it earlier. Like sometimes you're going to be training for certain things, and then other times you might be maintaining. Or sometimes you might be getting ready for a race and you're ramping up your fitness to be able to accommodate being able to run a full 26.2 miles. You know what I mean? And then you might, after that race comes, you might get back to normal. It's super important to find a baseline of, okay, this is about what I need to do every day to just be a fit human being who has an optimal body that feels good, helps me sleep, recovers well, eats good food, so that I can ultimately be there for my grandkids and be there for my kids, be there for my wife, be there for my friends, but most of all, be there for the people who I'm with every day.
Yeah, what's more important is consistency. That takes us back to what's more important, being 100% optimal or being consistent.
Yeah,
especially in the long-term marathon versus a sprint, the old adage. But when you were talking about what takes you away as far as your time is concerned, was that family life? Was that your spiritual walk? Was it relationships outside of your family? Did you feel when you were going through that period in your life where you were addicted to fitness that your relationships suffered in some way?
I think probably the relationship that suffered the most would have been twofold. My relationships with my kids didn't really suffer because I have enough grounding to know that if I'm not pouring into my kids, what the heck else am I doing? And I had enough understanding to be like Hannah and I did it together. So it was something we, most of the time, were spending time together doing.
And the kids were involved sometimes as well.
Yeah, a lot of times. Like we want to be just a healthy family in general. Like we do lots of big hikes and stuff. So I want my kids to have a good foundation of just healthy lifestyle. So they would work out with us a lot of times. Plus, when you've got a 10-year-old who has lots of energy, running around and working out is good for them. I don't care what anybody says.
And they sleep good.
And they sleep good. I would say most people that weren't into fitness on some level, like I probably didn't spend a ton of time with. In my quantitative time with the Lord is probably what suffered the most. And that's where I talked about earlier, like he was pricking my heart. Like he was like, dude, like I want to spend more time with you, which I used to spend probably 2 hours-ish a day working out and probably 25 to 30 minutes with the Lord. Now I spend 2 hours with the Lord and between 25 and 45 minutes a day working out. I try and hit an hour. That doesn't always happen with my workouts, but it totally has flip-flopped now. Like my focus is more time with the Lord. And I've seen way more benefits spiritually and just being consistent with a lot less time working out. So,
yeah, I think the realistic goals that you were talking about before, when I've heard people talk about functional fitness, my mind immediately goes to, like you've said before, I want to play with my grandkids in the backyard when I'm 60, or
right.
I want to be able to help in an emergency situation if my family needs it. I don't want to be a liability in my home. I want to lead my home.
Right.
And it's very difficult to do that if you aren't physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared.
Right.
So a lot of Stephanie and I, that's my wife, have talked a lot about being able to feel healthy. And I've noticed such a huge difference in the last month that we've been working out pretty much together, doing different programs, but I feel better.
Yeah.
I don't get out of breath going upstairs, and I, like the most ridiculous things that you notice.
Sure.
The other day I was jump roping for, I do 100 jump ropes in 4 sets. And I remember in the middle of them, I took a deep breath. I was like, that felt healthy.
Yeah.
And so now if I need to run and help my kids, I can. So I think that message really goes a long ways with me.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that other people who listen to it can kind of have that perspective. So
yeah, it's like you talk about being healthy for your grandkids and your kids. Like when I first started working out and I was doing P90X, in the back of my mind, the reason I worked out, and this is what I told everybody, even during my addicted time, like this is the thing that I told myself to kind of lie and be like, yeah, this is why you're doing it, was that like, I just want to be healthy for my kids and my grandkids. Like that became unhealthy, obviously, at another level. But that was my heart before I became addicted to working out. And that's still my heart now. I use that as an excuse to work out more than I should have and track my food more than I should have. But the fact remains the same. Like that is the reason that I work out. That's the reason that I'm a healthy individual, because my kids need me. My grandkids need me.
Yeah, that's great.
Got me fired up.
Yeah. Let's go do another workout.
It's too bad.
We're almost wrapping up this segment, so we'll just cut it there, and we'll be right back.
All right.
What's the most important thing that you would impart on what's your main mission in parenting? Like, what's your goal? What's the main goal? Everything
I do has multiples.
Dang it.
Because a lot of things are attached to other things. I can honestly say without a doubt, the number one thing is they need to be introduced to Jesus. They need to see Jesus in you. If they don't, it's not going to end well.
That is the correct answer.
Oh, okay.
Good. Yeah, good job. You're doing great.
Yeah, it really truly is it's the most important thing. So you need to be not just introducing them vocally, but like what you do better emulate the person of Jesus, or they're not going to catch it. They're not going to get it unless they're very fortunate to get it from somebody else, which most kids do not. If they don't get it from their parents, not that you can't mess your kids up and still have them turn out okay. It's possible. I've seen it, because God is good. God is good, and He's redemptive.
Yep.
So there is that to say. But our number one job is to be stewards of our children. And the Bible says that children are a blessing from the Lord. And I know that there are a lot of challenges with parenting. But there are so many more blessings than there are challenges if we're willing to see our kids as blessings as opposed to just challenges that we have to get through. It's interesting because kids are a lot of times a reflection of us, which can be very challenging as guys who don't want to admit our faults, because a lot of times our children are direct reflections of us, and they do things that are like, well, you're just doing that because you've seen me do it, which is a very difficult thing to deal with in our own hearts and minds if it's bad. But there's a flip side to that as well. And when you teach and train your children in the way that they should go, and then they respond in kind, and you see them doing something that is a blessing, you're like, yeah, that's fruit from me sowing into my child, and there's a blessing there because we are the parent who is reinforcing those good things. And I would say the most important thing, aside from introducing them to Jesus, both vocally and bodily, actually showing them, is time. Time. There's so much that can be covered, and by so much, there's so much hardship, difficulty, sin, negative things that can all be covered if you just spend time with your kids. Like, the overwhelming thing is, like, if every time you're with them, it's tiny little bit of time and it's always negative, that's going to impact them in a super bad way. But if you can spend enough time with them overall as a whole and produce good experiences over time, reinforcing good things, explaining good things, they will catch on to that, and that will cover you when in the moment you do something or say something that's not good, not okay, that's not right. Yeah, it's super, super important. Kids are no different than anything else. Like, they're there to be stewarded. That's why God put them in our lives. And if we are willing to take the time, effort, and energy off of ourselves and put that onto our kids, like, they're going to grow, and we're going to see them as such a blessing.
Yeah, that raises a question in my mind. What time is I think probably going to be the biggest challenge for, I would think, most people. You know, spending time with your kids is challenging when you're providing for the family, you have a job, then you come home and you have to do this and do that. You want to be there for your wife, do the dishes, cook dinner. Maybe you're building something for the house. All the things that are on our plate. You seem to be really good at involving your children in those things so that you're not sacrificing time when you're doing the things that you have to do as a father and a husband and a provider. So, like, being a father and a husband and a provider isn't an excuse to not spend time with your kids, even though it's like your job. Yeah. It's like, guess what? You still got to spend time with your kids. So can you give us a little bit of advice on how to bring your children into that role that you have as a provider so that you are still, involve them in those things? Because that's one thing that I find the most challenging is things take twice as much time when I try to involve my children in the things that I have to do so that I'm not sacrificing time. And that's frustrating to me. Yeah. Sometimes things get messed up and that's frustrating to me. So you would be the first person I would think of to ask, how do you involve your kids in all the things that you have to do that are your other jobs as well? Without, and doing it in a seamless way where it works.
You have to start looking at your kids differently. If your number one priority is not providing for my family, your number one priority is stewarding my child's heart, you will look at time with them very differently. Because if my number one priority is just putting food on the table, which I'll say right now is ultimately God's job, if your number one priority is just going and making a paycheck so that you can do the other things you need to financially, your children will be left behind, and you will get 20 years down the road where your child is walking down the aisle getting married, will be gone. There will be no relationship there, and there's no reason for them to spend any time with you then at that point. The investment has to start when they're little. Looking at them as investments of someday I'm going to get a return on this. It's no different than investing your money in the stock market. Like, I'm investing these 5 hours today and maybe an extra hour having to have my child with me, but that extra hour in the long run is going to return me 100-fold as opposed to maybe that hour that if I could get done an hour sooner is going to return. Does that make sense? Mm. So if your child is with you for 6 hours, that 6 hours will be way more beneficial than if you were gone for 5 hours and then come home and are with your kid for 1 hour. That makes sense? Like that 6 hours is so much more important, and you're going to get that back. It's really, really hard. It is so difficult, even as a good parent, to not just be frustrated with your kids all the time, because they are children and they do things that just drive you insane. And they say things and they ask questions that are like, dude, why are you asking that? You know the answer. Looking at your children, that's why, like, the way that you view them has to change if you want them to feel like they're a part of you. Like even my son Castle, like he was asking me a question today, and I almost responded. I think I first responded with, no, I didn't. I waited. He said something, and I was like, why are you asking that question? You're 11 and you know the answer, like, or you should know the answer. And that's what I wanted to say, but that would have been demeaning and belittling him, and it would have been reinforcing the idea that, oh, why would I ask my dad any questions? Why would I come to him with anything, even if he did know the answer? Right. So I stopped myself. We were working on some electrical stuff, and I was able to kind of calm myself down really quickly and just be like, turn it around a little bit so that I kind of pulled a little bit more information out of him to see if he knew, and why are you asking a question I feel like you should know? And it was just helpful for me to take a step back for a second and not just believe that, oh, he's just doing this because he's stupid. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's usually a reason why kids do what they do, and a lot of times it's because they want your attention, or they want to know that they have your attention when they need it. So that it's really, what I was saying is it's really difficult to bring them along, but it's mostly just about your mindset. If you're bringing them along to steward them instead of make money, you're going to be willing to be a little bit more selfless in that moment and have them with you for the 6 hours that it's going to take, rather than do it for 5 and then get back home or whatever.
Yeah. My oldest is 6. And so I'm like right on that. I'm crossing that threshold where he's my first child that I have to, you want to spend time with all of your kids, but like when a kid is 2-3 years old, like they love you. They want to be with you. It's when they hit like 5, 6, 7 years old, when they start to wonder, do they want to spend time with me? Do they love me? You know, and my 6-year-old is getting to that point where he'll ask to do things with me, or he'll ask if the classic, can we go out and throw ball, Dad? And I've got half the house is torn apart. I'm stressed out. My wife is probably stressed out from the mess that I've made. I'm trying to fix something. And I am, for the life of me, trying to figure out how to navigate that dumb question. Do you want to go out in the yard and throw ball, Dad? You know, that we all have seen in the movies and the television. It's real. It will happen to you when you have a boy or a girl someday. Yeah. I am still trying to figure out how to navigate, like, either just going out and doing it and setting that stress aside from, you know, the house being torn apart, or being able to say to him, you know, not right now, buddy. This is really important. You know, would you like to come help me with this? And doing that in a way that's seamless and, you know, not frustrated, doesn't take twice as long. Yeah, it's a challenge. I think that is really good advice. Seeing your children as an investment, that if whatever you're doing does take double the time, or if going out and throwing ball means that this doesn't get done, that investment is worth double the time it takes to put in.
Yes. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And even like that, think about it this way. If in 20 years, when he's grown and gone, and you're on the other side of it, and I know that this is true because I've talked to a lot of parents, and I have parents myself who have said, I wish that I was able to be around you as much now as you wanted to be around me then. Now, I'm very fortunate because I literally had a dad who took me everywhere with him all the time. And so I'm very blessed. For me, like, thinking about you with him, it's like, okay, I know that in 20 years he's going to be grown and gone, and you will be wishing that he would come home and spend time with you. The same way that he's wishing right now that you would stop what you're doing and spend time with him. Right. And if you can put yourself 20 years down the road, you will do things differently right now, which is very difficult when your house is torn apart and things are happening and your wife is stressed out and you have other children, but thinking about it that way of this is going to flip someday. And if I put in the investment now, my son will come spend time with me when he's 25. Right. And I will be able to receive the investment 100-fold in 20 years.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, because, and I'm not in that stage yet. Yeah. I have a little over 2-year-old and a 3-month-old now. But with our first, I remember, actually, no, with our second, the first couple of weeks were a little bit tougher. Yeah. But like they always are with a newborn. So you don't sleep, there's crying, and then you've got a toddler running around, and it gets very stressful very quick. And I don't remember where I heard it, but somebody said, like, when you're 80, you're going to wish you had just one more of those moments. Yep. So I'm like, my perspective shifted. Yep. And so like you're saying, Nick, I think you'll never regret playing ball and leaving the house a mess.
Never.
And I'm not saying this from experience, because I'm sure I'm going to have the same struggles, because I also like to get things done so that they're done. And there's only a certain amount of time, amount of hours in the day, and you want to get those done. So what it's worth to you is when they're gone, are you going to wish you did that?
Right. Yeah. And
how does that translate from your son to his son? Yep. And it's a generational thing, and
absolutely is.
You can see that on the inverse.
Yeah, of course.
With absentee fathers or abusive fathers, there's a recidivism rate, and it's almost directly correlated with their kids and how they treat their kids and their spouse. And the more that people can open their eyes to that and take in good advice, like both of you just gave, I think that's huge. Because if I were to talk to my dad, I don't know if he would, well, it was a long time ago before the internet and podcasts and YouTube, but they would have been like, I didn't know any of this. I mean, they still did a pretty amazing job, but being present and getting good information from fathers of all different walks and different ideas and different ways to go about it, that's what we're about here. Because the amount of disaffected young men who are fathers, or, even in their 30s and 40s, the numbers are crazy, and you were in law enforcement. You've seen it. So it's just an epidemic, and we need encouragement, and we need this kind of advice for people to say, your priority isn't your laundry list of tasks you have to do around the house. It's investing in these little kids, because right now you're what they care about. You're the one they want to spend all of their time with. And when they're gone, it's just like you said. Yep. It's going to flip.
They're gone. It's so interesting. Like, I had that revelation. I think Casa was like 1.5. And I'm still having that revelation. Like, literally, I lay in bed with my kids at night, and there's different times where I'm like, I'd rather go do this. I'd rather go do that. And I just think about, like, I'm not going to have them in my house to just snuggle with them. Like, I'm going to want these moments back. Now, I'm a little bit farther down the road, so I can even look at like a 2-year-old and be like, wow, that time is gone. It was so precious. Did I use it wisely? You know what I mean? Think about your 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Right.
Think about from
He's 18,
2,
as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
He's
Think
gone.
about from 2 to 6. Did you use that time wisely? Do you wish you could go back to when he was 2 and do some things differently?
100%.
100%. So 100%. Think about that now and make the changes from 6 to 18. And if you can grasp that, it'll change his life. It'll transform his life, and it'll change yours, because you won't look back then with regret. You'll say, that wiring is not a person. My house is not a person. My projects are not a person. Right?
Right.
We're affecting souls. And you got to think about, it's not just about your son, and it's not just about his son and his son and his son. Could be 100 generations that are affected by what you do and how you do it right now.
Right on.
So if you look at it as just one person, like, that's not big enough. You have to understand that his soul is going to then teach and train somebody else's soul and somebody else's soul.
Right.
Somebody else's soul. I don't know where are we at with time.
We're doing pretty good.
Bonus, your kids will be pleasant to be around too.
That is so.
I don't, most of the time, if we hang out, most of the time, one of your kids is tagging along, and it's never a bummer. I came over and we went hunting this past fall, and Castle sat in the tent with us, and it was awesome. Like, he's the best. He's hilarious. He's so fun to be around, and he's like, it's like hanging out with an adult. Like, he's so cool. And so that's another benefit too. Like, have your kids around you, and as long as you are that example that you should be, you spend 90% of the time, if your kid spends 90% of their time with you and 10% with the rest of the world, they will be pleasant to other people to be around folks. So that's important. It's very important.
Yeah. It's something to be said. Like, we homeschool. That's not because the world is a deep, dark, bad place. I mean, it is. In all reality, it is. But we homeschool because we wanted to have children and we wanted to be around our children. So we didn't just want to send them to school to go have our own lives and to go work our jobs and to be like, okay, now I see you for 3 hours in the evening, help you with your homework, and then you go to bed. Like, we actually wanted to produce amazing adults, like people who are going to go change the world, which is very rarely do you see that when you don't spend time with your kids. So that's another thing that kind of goes along with the time side of stuff, is we homeschool so that we can spend more time with them, because character is important. And it's difficult to teach character when your child is at school. Not that people can't do it, and I've seen it done, but I think you have to work extra hard to undo some of the things that they learn in public school, or some of the things that they learn when they're away from you for so long.
There's behavioral influences. There's
a lot.
Yeah, it's a very formative time of their life, and we homeschool as well, and we homeschool for the same reasons. I personally couldn't see myself watching my 4-year-old get on the bus. It makes me want to cry thinking about it. I would prefer not to watch them get on a bus and go to a scary place. And I know that, there's learning and they get used to it, but I like that our 4-year-old stays home with us instead of going off to preschool. I like that, my first grader stays home with us and doesn't go off to, on a bus to some place where this is a formative time of your kids' lives. And anyway, homeschooling might be a different topic, but
yeah, I'm sure. But it becomes a point of who's raising your kids.
Right.
And that is the hardest part for me when we plan to and hope to homeschool, because I think that it's important for our children to learn from us, and just as important for us to have that fostering relationship back and forth and be able to sow into their lives on a daily basis. I'm lucky enough to work from home, a good percentage of the time, and that's also helpful. But I can't imagine sending my kid on a bus for 8 hours or whatever, so young. And it's just a priority for us because I don't want somebody else raising my children. It's my responsibility. It's my job. I'm the father. Stephanie's the mother.
Right.
And we ultimately are their protection.
You have to answer to God.
Yeah.
For how you raise your children. Ultimately, if you believe in the Bible and you believe that what the Bible says is true, is you, as the father, are the head of the home. So ultimately, like, you have to answer to God for the arrows that he gave you and what you did with them, the talents that he gave you. So that's a heavy thing to think about. You know what I mean? Not that, I don't want anybody listening to this to think, well, geez, man, I can't send my kids to school or feel demonized because of that. Like, that's not at all, I think, where our position is. But it's just food for thought of, hey, if you are sending your kids to school and you're seeing some of the negatives that school brings, think about it. Do some research. Think about if your lifestyle would maybe accommodate homeschool or even some hybrid thereof. Something to think about. But
that's a great point, because I'm not at all an absolutist in any way, one way or another. And I actually went to both. So I was homeschooled until 9th grade, and then I went to high school, and there was a lot of great benefits to both. But you have to. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, and we're in no place to judge. And so, I'm glad that you said that, because I don't want anybody to think that that's what this is about. But you need to be vigilant with your children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's in anything. That's if they go to a homeschool conference or they go to school every day, whatever the fact is. So
you got to be open-minded. Some of my best friends decided to send their children to public school, and in the years that they've been doing that, I've learned. So I went to public school my whole life, but still, from a parenting perspective, it's new, and I've learned there's tons of benefits to sending your kids to public school. So yeah, emphasize the fact that there's no right or wrong answer, and everybody's situation is different. Yeah. But yeah, two of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given from a parenting perspective. In the most simple, the two most simple but best pieces of advice I've been given is during a time when I was, long story short, just stricken with worry about what I'm doing to my kids, or what we're doing to my kids. My wife is an angel, so I'm going to be honest. What I'm doing to my kids, and someone told me, do you love them? Yes, I do. I do love them very, very much. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are households where that's not always the case, but that's not my household. I love my children very much. Mm-hmm. And they said, they'll be fine. Now, you have to be intentional, but... that
was my dad, by the way, that said that.
Oh, was it really?
I was there.
Maybe the person that... Was it your dad?
Yeah, it was my
dad.
Okay,
because I'm thinking it was from somebody else, but...
He's on the list. So.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it might have been. It might have been, yeah. So, and then the other piece of advice was, when we would send the kids away, and then they'd come back and we have to deal with all those behavioral issues when your kids spend a little time away from you, and then they come back to the house, and it's like they've unlearned every rule or whatever you've ever set before them. Yeah. That person said to me, they spend 90% of their time with you, and they spend 10% of their time away from you. Don't be so worried about where their true influence in their heart is coming from. So yeah, I mean, everyone's situation is a little different. Yeah. Don't be so worried. Be intentional. Don't be worried. Be intentional.
You know what's one really important thing that I think a lot of people miss? Tell your kids that you love them.
Oh, man. It's the best.
Tell them that you appreciate them. Tell them that you are proud of them. Don't assume that they know this stuff, because there's somebody out there, and somebody else will tell them or show them the love that they're looking for if they don't get it from you. Mm. I brought something with me tonight. We have time?
Yeah.
What did you bring?
Okay. I brought this with me tonight. Let's see if I can read without crying. Oh, man. I've been trying to be really, really intentional with my kids lately to tell them how much I love them, how much I appreciate them, and to just affirm who they are as people, because I know that stuff is like $1,000 bills in the bank account. I know that it is. And so my daughter, Lana, she's 9, and she's kind of the last one in the line that I've really been like working on. Like each day I kind of spend my time with one of my kids, not time with them, but I sit them down specifically and I encourage them, tell them how much I love them, just bless them and just say I'm thankful for them, and just good stuff, just really affirming them. Anyway, so this morning, Lana is very analytical. She writes and reads a lot. So I decided, okay, for Lana today, I was going to write her a note. So I wrote her a note, a little love note, and I set it right beside her in her bed. Oh, nice. Boy.
Nice, dude. That's a freaking, that's
we got a minute and a half.
Okay, this is
what start crying.
I want to get this. Yeah. So if it's worth it to me to stop and just get the last 5 minutes, unless you can do it in.
I think I could do it in a minute.
All right, man.
All right.
I don't have tissues, so
it's okay.
Be nice to us.
It's okay. So she came downstairs while I was working out this morning. She never works out with me. She came down. She worked out the entire workout with me. She brought the note down, and she was like, "Thank you so much for that note. Really blessed me," and just different things. Anyway, so then I was working later. She brings this down, and I didn't see it when she brought it down, but she brought it down. This is what she wrote. Daddy. Oh, okay. I love you. You are amazing. I am thankful for you. I'd love to go on a date with you. Love, Lana. Just ridiculous. Like one little piece of me giving 30 seconds writing my heart down to her. And then she reciprocates it. That's what you want for your children. I promise you, if you invest in them, you will see a return that you will not be able to measure right now. But when the time comes, you'll be able to measure it, and you'll be thankful for every second you invest.
Man, that's good, man.
Right on. Woo. That's why you're here, brother.
Wow.
Love it.
Dude, what a way to end. I can't thank you enough for coming. This
Heck
is gonna
yeah.
be the first of many.
That's why you're here.
That's
why
the
you're
kind of
coming back.
stuff we're about right there.
Yeah.
And man, that's gonna touch people because it's so true.
Needs to be said, yeah.
Yep.
And you have so much to offer. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for having
I'm
me.
gonna
you.
think about that a lot. And we'll see you on the flip side.
Let's go. Let's do this again.
All right,
Right on.
let's do it. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.